Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 17th episode of Cat's Tea and Witchcraft. My name is Fauna, and I am your host. Today's episode is going to be about the moon and an introductory lesson into moon magic. So, a lot of witches really do love the moon. In witchcraft, the moon is a pretty powerful tool that we can use. Some of us see it as a source of energy, but others also view it as a source or a representation of feminine energy. It is also the big ball in the sky that lights up the night from the light that bounces off from the sun. It also affects the oceans and the water tides of the earth, and also keeps the earth balanced, which is pretty nifty in its own right, because it's kind of nice that our planet doesn't just wobble all over the place. For those who are either new or have not studied in the Wiccan traditions that are available to us, the sun is a representation of male energy, and the moon is a representation of the goddess, which I already mentioned a second ago. So moon equals feminine or goddess, and the sun is masculine or the god. So the moon itself is like over 240,000 miles away from the Earth. And Earth itself only has one moon, which is different from other planets, at least in our solar system, because there are some that have multiple. But we seem to be doing pretty fine with just the one that we have. Apparently, it takes the moon to make a complete orbit around 27.3 days, but there's about 29.5 days between the full moon to the next full moon. Usually we kind of say and round things up to about an average of 28 to 29 days. Usually what you'll hear just in common conversation. And at night when we see the moon, unless it's a new or dark moon, which means you can't really see the moon at all, the reason we see the different phases of the moon is it's how the sun is shining on the moon from slightly different angles. So it makes the moon look like it's changing shape, and what we call those different shapes are phases of the moon. The different phases of the moon is the new or the dark moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full, waning gibbous, third quarter, and waning crescent, and then we go right back to the new moon. In witchcraft and Wicca, it is very common that witches celebrate the phases of the moon. If it's just honoring the moon or using those different phases to strengthen their spells, depending on what their goals and desires are. There are two main ones that a lot of people kind of focus on a little bit more than the others, but you can technically do spells through any moon at any time. The two phases that are mostly focused on are the full moons and the new moons. And technically they are opposite to each other, so people will use those different phases for different strengths for their spell work. And the same thing goes for the other in-between phases. They all have their strengths. Just like people, we all have different abilities and skills. The term for these celebrations of the moon are called espits, while other celebrations, kind of like Yule, which is coming up in the next couple days, is a Sabbat, but when you work with the moon, it's called espits. For a lot of people, espits are when you work with magic, and Sabbats are when you just celebrate. For the moment, I'm just going to focus on really the new and the full moon and what those strengths are, because since there are quite a few different phases, I don't want to get you too bogged down into each individual one. So from the waxing moons to the full moon, the strengths is how it's almost like building up and manifesting. So think about how you start with the new moon and it's nothing there. You see nothing in the sky. But then as you're getting up to the full moon, you have a little sliver that's growing into a complete ball in the sky. So it's building up. So when you're working in these phases, it's a great time for manifesting and building energy. So maybe if you're looking for new jobs, you're looking for money, new homes, anything positive that's going to benefit you or something you're trying to receive, this is a range of time that maybe you want to do that manifesting or receiving. So positive energy building, healing magic, developing skills, or just gratitude and honoring your deities. The full moon tends to have more energy than the waxing phases, but you can still do spells in between those days. Say you have a really big spell you want to do, and you want to finish it and use the energy of the full moon. Maybe you can start at the waxing crescent or right after the new moon, and then maybe do a little bit of your spell every single day, or repeat it for multiple days until you get to the full moon and completely finish the spell, or do the biggest part of your spell. Oh, you can probably hear my cat. You can finish your spell on the full moon, so you can build up energy over days and days and days, or you can just do your spell on the full moon. And it depends on what you want to do. Maybe you feel like you will get more of a result doing it multiple days, or you just want to use 100% of energy on one night and go all out and release all that energy at once. For the waning moons all the way up to the new moon strengths, imagine it being the opposite of the waxing to the full. So after you had the full moon, the moon is now going to continuously get smaller and smaller. So it's disappearing, it's going away. So that is good for banishing, getting rid of things, letting go of things. So if you're trying to banish negative things in your life and focus on cleansing, and when you're cleansing, you are trying to get rid of things, not take things in. So banishing negative things in your life, focusing on cleansing, and getting rid of all those ickies that you might have had come your way from the previous phases, or just something that you finally do want to focus on that's been around for a while. So maybe you can focus on cleansing your spaces or yourself. You can try to banish bad habits that you've had. You can banish or try to step away or disconnect from people who no longer benefit you for your greatest interest and might be causing more harm than good in your life. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be a job you're trying to get rid of, but also actively trying to find a new and better job. And you can also focus on just shadow work in general. You don't always have to be doing a spell every night of the week or every week at all. You can do other things that are magical, that are manifesting and banishing. And some of the things that you can do that doesn't necessarily need spell work, which is shadow work. And if you don't know what that is, go check out my episode on shadow work. And just like I said for the full moon, the new moon is slightly stronger in the sense for banishing or cleansing than those waning phases are. And like I said, maybe you want to do that thing where the days prior you can build up those banishing techniques, or you can just settle for that one day and release all that energy there at the actual phase of the new moon. So just like any type of magic that you do, if it's involving the moon or not, because some people actually work with the sun, or they don't really focus working with either one of them, because some people aren't nature-based, some are more universal energy-based. It all depends on the type of witchcraft that you do. But if you do work with the elements, or you work with the moon or your sun, you don't have to wait for a special phase or a particular day to do your spells. And if it really does come down to it, and you want to try to banish something from the waxing to the full moon, do what you need to do. Because if you have to wait to do spells that you do not feel like you can wait on, do it when you can. Because when it comes down to it, just put the energy into your spells. The benefits of knowing about the benefits of different phases or different days of the week, or the associations of colors, whatever it is and the type of magic that you're doing, just know that if you do want an extra boost and you can wait for a particular day, then try to do that. But don't feel like you have to wait. When it comes to working with the full or the new moon, just say you only really do work on those particular days of the month because they're just really full of energy. There's also a rule that maybe you can't do it on the exact day. There is still a lot of energy the day before a full moon or a new moon and the day after. So you technically have a range of 2 to 3 days where you can get a ton of energy out of it. On those days before or after, you might not get 100% of the energy of the full or the new moon, but you might get more than like 95 to 90% of what you would otherwise. And that's still a lot more than if you did it 5 days before or 5 days after. Because in general, life is really busy, and sometimes you can't actually do something on the exact night. Maybe you're working, maybe you're with family, or something just came up a last minute and you're like, ah, shit, I can't actually do it on the night of the full moon. I can only do it the day after. Go ahead. Like I said, do what you need to do. But if you feel bad about missing it, there's a lot of energy still there within that day or so. And when you do magic with the moon, it's not actually its own form of magic. It's just you're utilizing the energy of the moon for your magic. So you can do any type of candle magic, kitchen magic, if you are of age and you do sex magic, dream magic, anything of the sort. The moon is just there as a tool for your rituals or magical workings. As you start to work with doing moon magic or working with the moon and just trying to get more facts on it, you'll probably hear a variety of terms, or you'll have questions, or you're going to hear old superstitions about the moon. So I'm going to go over a couple of those right now. One term that you might hear is called voiding course. It sounds really weird, and like it took a while for me to really understand what it is, only because it's not that it's hard, it's explained really oddly. For some reason, like every time I tried to look it up, it just didn't seem clear to me, and it could just be me misreading things. But what my understanding of what voiding course is a period of time where the moon is transitioning between one astrological sign to another. And there are people that think that you should not do magic work during those times because you want to use the energy of the moon while it is in the full astrological sign, not in between two. So maybe if you're unsure if that's going to affect you or not, maybe give it a try of doing a spell while the moon is voiding course and when it's not, and seeing what results you might get. So essentially, this is not going to be an accurate time. It's just an example. Say 1 month the moon is going through voiding course on a random Tuesday in the month between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. that morning. That would mean between the 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. it is voiding course, and do not do spells during that time. Hopefully my understanding of it is accurate. That's just how I've been able to understand it and the way it's been explained to me. Hopefully I'm interpreting that correctly, because sometimes like it really did confuse me for a while. So just if you have questions, try to Google the different times depending on when you're trying to do a spell and see if it works out. You might also hear the term drawing down the moon. There are books that explain this as well. Most of the books I have are very Wicca based, but even if you are not Wiccan, you can still do this. So pretty much what it is just like some people do when they're working with deities, or if they're just worshiping the moon, it's like inviting the moon to participate in your craft or your blessings or your spell work. So you're drawing it down from the sky and bringing it down to work with you. And generally that's just doing some sort of chant, talking to it, speaking to it, just some sort of ritual to where you feel like you're connecting and you're saying, hey, come on down, come on, hang out and work with me. But try to be respectful as well, just like working with any deity too. When it comes to preparing for any rituals or spells that you're doing with the moon, just treat it like you're doing any other ritual that might not be focused on the moon. In general, if you want to have a special setup for when you do something at night, you can dress up your altar or your magical space in black and silver, or anything that represents the moon to you. You could have statues of a goddess or the Wiccan goddess, depending on your tradition, or you can just have a generic female if you have a more ancient style of a goddess like the Venus of Willendorf or any other ancient form. You can use that too. It's a female deity, and that could be used as a representation. You can buy them. You can make your own. I made my moon statue out of modeling clay, And it's kind of cool. It doesn't look perfect, but when you think about women and humans in general are not perfect creatures. We have all our imperfections. So in my piece, you can kind of see fingerprints and kind of, it's not perfectly smooth, but it's more accurate than if it would be smooth. Women have curves. Women have anything going on with their body. It's just not this perfect feature like you would see with a sculpture that was repeatedly made over and over again with a mold. It's more natural and individual, just like every single one of us. So if you want to make your own, make it in a way that makes you feel powerful. Additional items that you can use are candles, incense that might represent your goals depending on the phases that you're working with. Also, don't forget to cleanse your area. You can either do smoke cleansing, sound cleansing, you can use your broom or besom, and you can cast a full circle if you working with circles. I know there are people who just don't care to cast a full protection circle, but then there are others that won't do anything without casting a full circle. Recently, we've been having some eclipses in 2020, which has, of course, been a very interesting scenario. But some practitioners see the eclipse period, and it's usually pretty short. It's never for multiple days at a time, and it's not like we have these total blockouts for like crazy situations that you would only see in supernatural movies or crazy stories. But if you want to, you can see the eclipses as an entire cycle of the moon in one period. So you go from a full moon, and then it goes away into a new moon, and then it starts to reveal the moon again back to a full moon. So it's like a whole month cycle in just one day. So if you want to utilize some crazy energy that might come from it, go ahead and do that. Might see it as an extra bonus round to get some really good work done, or just get those extra amplifications if you only work with a full moon or work with a new moon, but maybe you just get all those all around energies working and see what results you get. Just like anything, you want to experiment. So if you do an eclipse and it works for you, and then another time you work with an eclipse it doesn't, see if it's even worth your time to focus on the eclipse energy. And it possibly, in any moon workings that you do, I'll just say this now, different times of the year, the moons will be in different astrological phases. And for some people, they notice, depending on the moon phase they were born under, they either have better or worse luck while they are doing work while the moon is under a particular astrological sign. So if you haven't read your birth chart, maybe look up what that might be for you. Even if you don't do magic on an eclipse, maybe just try to appreciate it if the hemisphere that you live on, because it's usually, if you're in the north, you can't see it in the south and reverse. So just appreciate watching the eclipses. Sometimes they're a little late at night when they start, but if it's at a time to where you can stay up and you're awake and you have good weather, watch the eclipses, because it's not like you can watch a solar eclipse, which is during the day. So watch the lunar eclipses. Enjoy it. It's something that it's just slow and peaceful, and you can just appreciate nature in general, because it's not something that happens every day. Another common thing, which is more of a superstition, there are people who's like, is the full moon bad luck? No. But it might be a risk of crazy things happening, because the moon has a weird pull with the tides and our energies and different things going on. So if you feel like you're going to be affected in any way that you might not be comfortable with, you can just feel like you want to focus on grounding a little bit more or shielding yourself, just like when you're doing anything else. And I say this repeatedly throughout all the episodes. Do what works for you. If you don't want to work with the full moon because you feel like it affects you in a bad way, then don't work with the full moon. Just find the strengths in your craft and use what works best for you. If you don't feel like you get good luck with moon cycles at all, maybe work with the solar cycle. Even though the sun is open every day, do things during the day. Maybe there's different times of the day that are stronger for you. Do you think working with it at noon is strongest, when it's setting, or when it's rising? I guess if you want to work with the sun, because I haven't looked into working with sun magic because that's not what I've focused on, is more doing things with the moon, is just like with the waxing to the full moon, because it's building up. Use what you would do from the waxing to the full moon and do it while the sun is rising on the horizon up till noon, and then afternoon treat it as if it's waning down to the new moon, which is when the sun sets. And at that point, you can do that literally every day because the sun is always there. I would say the only exceptions to that is if you live in a part of the world where you have extended periods of darkness and extended periods of light. And I know some places like that happen in Alaska. So if you don't feel like maybe doing magic on any of the moon phases, or you're just not having any need to do any spells, you can do other things if you want to celebrate an espit on the full or the new moon. You can meditate. You can make moon water for other rituals when you actually have them, or for things that you could use later to use the moon water in spells or baths, or you just want to water your plants with them. Anything of the sort. You can use these times to cleanse your crystals, because cleansing your crystals with the moonlight tends to be less damaging to them, because there are some crystals that can't be put in water, can't be put in salt, and can't be put in anything like sunlight because it'll make it fade. And the same thing goes for some of your tools. If you have some athames or anything like that that you use regular, that you feel like you need to get negative energies out because you've used them, or just stagnant energy from a previous ritual that you've done, put it in your windowsill with your crystals. And in general, if there's nothing else you want to do, just honor the goddesses that you work with, or just honor the moon in general. If you ever have bad weather, or you're indoors and you really want to do your rituals or work with the moon outside, you might not live in a place where you can do that, or you might have bad weather. So if you're stuck inside during ritual, it doesn't mean you can't do magic. Not everyone, like I said, has those conditions that are perfect. So if you want fresh air, just open your windows. So if you can't open a window, you can also just open your blinds and just have that light come in. And you don't even necessarily need to see the moon from your window, because it all depends on the direction your windows are facing. Just because you can't see the moonlight does not mean the moonlight is not reaching you, because the moon is above us. It's not like it's like hanging out behind the other side of your house. It's literally in the sky above us, so it sees everything with a bird's eye view. Okay guys, so that's all the information that I actually have for you today. The only other thing that I want to go over is I got a new book on moon magic. It's called Moon Magic, a handbook of lunar cycles, lore in mystical energies, and it's by Aurora Kane. And the topics that it goes over, I'll read you the table of contents, is the magical moon and her powers, the full moon and other magical moon phases, cultural beliefs, goddesses and Wicca, harnessing moon magic with herbs and nature. So if you like working with herbs, that would be good. Harnessing moon magic with crystals and gemstones. Those are for our crystal people. My cat is very talkative tonight, so you might hear him some more before this ends. The moon, astrology, and tarot. And the last main one is working your moon magic and simple rituals and spells. And there looks like there's little new moon spells, waxing full, and waning spells as well. So if you are interested in this book, my cat is now attacking my Yule and witches bells that are on my front door. He has had the zoomies tonight, and I have tried so hard to try to cut out any of that extra noise from him in the background, but he just is showing me that he wants to be a part of tonight's podcast. So taking off from there, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to follow and send me a message either on Instagram at Cats, Tea, and Witchcraft. On Twitter, it's Cats, Tea, and Witch. You can also send me an email at catsteaandwitchcraftpodcast@gmail.com. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you want to reach out, you can also actually leave a voicemail for me on the Anchor website, which is the platform that I use to distribute my podcast. This is not a paid ad or anything. This is just something I want to share with you. It's an option, and you can find that link on my Instagram. I did make a post about it. So if you want to leave a voicemail and you want it to be in a future episode, if you just want to ask a question, go ahead and submit that as well. I am hoping to actually have an episode where you guys are sending me in questions for an episode, maybe questions I'm not going to answer before, but I'll answer during an episode. And if you send me one of the voicemail on the Anchor platform, I will put it in to a podcast episode. Maybe it might just be one per episode, or if I have enough, I will put an entire episode together of these voicemails. I would advise don't put any too personal information. You can give me a nickname, or you can give me your social media tags just for a little bit more privacy, or you can make up just something completely fake for your safety, but it's something that you will know that it is your particular question. Of course you're going to know because it's your voice, but maybe if you're not paying attention and you just want to have the answer question in general, send me a voicemail, but just don't put personal information that's too personal. So maybe just a general question. And if you want to get or give me a little more details that I can leave out of my answer, but I'll still give an answer with details that doesn't reference your maybe too personal things and you just want to have a one-on-one conversation, send me a separate message, but let me know that you left a voicemail, and that is what this additional information is attached to. So, trailing off of that, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, I appreciate every single one of you, and I will talk to you guys next week. Have a good one. Blessed be.